marketing's about making controlled mistakes. And I think people forget about that a lot. There's nothing wrong with trying something crazy. Now, when I say mistakes, I don't mean, something that's offensive or illegal, putting it out on the internet. I mean, trying something that may or may not work.
Welcome to Connect to Market. I'm Casey Cheshire. Join us as we learn from marketing leaders who are driving founder-led growth. We're sponsored by Ringmaster, building B2B podcasts and communities to reconnect you with your audience. All right, here we go. This thing is launching. This rocket is taking off. I'm excited to introduce our guest today. He's a badass. He is absolutely going to be schooling us today, and I can't wait to crack open that brain and learn from him. Well, who is he? Who is he? He is a marketing leader, thought leader, PE-backed growth strategist, a demand gen builder, decades of experience in that executive role. I'm looking forward to hearing from him on a strategic sense, especially as his experience in SaaS, which I know a lot of people listening thinking about. He's GTM, ABM, RevOps, you name it, and he's helped scale revenue from 5 to 40 at a previous company. 5 to 40, that's some growth right there. And I would love to get some of that growth myself. Fractional head of marketing, GTM strategy at multiple early B2B SaaS companies, owner of Big Breakthrough Marketing, Tim Lozier. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, Casey, how are you? It's good to be here.
Man, I'm excited that you're here. I love your background.
Thanks.
Literally and metaphysically. So I'm excited to learn from you today, man. So in order to do that, though, I have to grab my giant blue foam finger and ask you, Tim, what is the number one thing that marketers need to do in order to connect to their market?
Oh, man. I mean, I think it's over the years, it's been so many different things, but I think one thing has always been been consistent across it all. And it's really just about knowing the story that needs to be told. And too often we kind of try to tell a story as marketers, but we're kind of telling the story that we want to tell, like how we are, are building a product or a feature set. And that's not really how buyers are searching for us anymore. The story that buyers need to be told, they don't need more noise. They need clarity. They're not searching for keywords anymore. They're really asking questions. And so the companies that are actually going to win are the ones that understand those questions and then tell a story that the buyer is actually going to need. And, especially where we are now with how people search, it's all question based. We're using prompts. We're not using keywords. And so I think as marketers, we need to shift our understanding about telling the story versus knowing the story that needs to be told through the lens of the buyer.
Man, the power of story just shows up time and time again.
Yeah.
When we're telling the story we want to tell, where does that come from? And I don't say this like poo-pooing everyone else. I've definitely done that myself. What is that?
Well, I think when we kind of get into the whole, strategy about what we want to be and how we want to go, and we build a great product, and this is especially relevant for a lot of SMB companies in the B2B space. You build a great product and you have all these features and you're trying to build that story of, we are a purpose-built system that will help your company do this, that, and the other. And I think it feels right because you're making noise and you're trying to make noise about yourself and you're trying to draw attention to yourself. And the irony of it all is that, yeah, you're drawing attention to yourself, but the reality is if you're especially an SMB, people don't necessarily know your brand. They not even know your product yet, but they do know what they're facing as far as challenges. And so what you can do is really, rather than trying to vie for attention, you earn the attention through your own relevance and being able to shape the story around what their problems are. Because buyers are asking conversational questions. They're not thinking about, I need a workforce management software, or I need, a project management software.
What? They're not using our own particular words to shop for the thing.
Surprising, right?
They're not using our made up brand words.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is like, and especially now with this, with the way that, AI is kind of taken over. I mean, SEO is still relevant,
Yeah.
but you're already halfway down the page before you're a high result because, Gemini's taken over. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
the companies that are going to win in this AI driven discovery are really the ones that deeply understand the buyer's problems, not the ones that shout the loudest. So that's really where it becomes a shift. And I think, as marketing leaders or even just executive leaders, I think they want to shout about the what their products are doing best and how we're, differentiated and all these different things. And I think really where the benefit truly comes from is not just talking about how your product is solving the challenges, is really just being more human about how we are answering the questions that they may have. And obviously it ties to the product and ties to what you do because you're not just answering all people's questions, but I think it's really just that specific human-centered content that really will allow you to punch above your weight as a small business because it's just the playing field's been reset with AI. It just doesn't care how big your brand is. It cares how you're structuring your content to really align to what the questions that are being asked.
Can you fake it? Can you just like straight up AI just make me content?
No, because AI knows what you're really doing at that point, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's um there's a humanistic content to it, right?
Right.
You can use AI though. So like there's a lot of ways you can actually figure out like how to get the questions. I think that's the one thing a lot of people say to me, they're like, okay, great. Like I don't know what my buyers are asking. Like, I know my persona, but
Hmm.
personas is something that we make assumptions on what their motivations are. And we use some research and we use some data. We're making a lot of assumptions, but questions really reveal the truth. So what is my buyer really trying to figure out in the moments that matter? And so a lot of ways you can do that is, through internally, right? You can go and ask your sales and your customer service and your SDRs. And, um, I've worked with companies and we put a shared doc and we say, what are the 50 questions that we have to answer? And it just becomes like this collaborative thing. And then you use gong calls and you start using those models where the calls are recorded, or whether they're with customers or with prospects, whatever they may be, and you're just picking up on those questions that are typically getting asked. And yeah, you can ask AI directly, right? What questions are, companies asking about this, that, and the other? But the problem is, it's going to give you a lot of broader things than maybe that might be specific to your company. And then there's tools you can use actually, there's new intent tools. And I've found these incredibly amazing. There's tools like Answer the Public and Also Asked. And basically you're typing in, maybe your keyword, and then it's pulling up all the common questions that have been asked by both AI and by both search engines. So now you're like, okay, now I got intent tools I can use that are not just
Yeah.
based on that. Um, and I think, when you mentioned about can I fake it by using AI, you can actually use AI to fill in gaps. So you can ask AI, what's missing? What's missing from typical answers in my industry? And so if you see where AI answers are shallow, that means you can publish a deeper answer. You say, okay, well, these answers aren't really getting, very far. So let's create some deeper content. If the answers are generic, then you start building specific stories. And if they're just flat out wrong, you just change the narrative and you say, we're going to write what the reality is. So there's a lot of different like ways to find those questions and start building out your content around that.
The idea of even just I love the recursive loop of going back on and giving it the request to what is missing? What do you see over here that's missing?
Mhm.
And then just fill that
Yeah.
and do more of that. Like that's a really cool I feel like those are some really cool hacks, but also what are the 50 questions we need to just have answered? The FAQ is definitely coming back with all the rage.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I mean, what one of my last gigs, we've just basically created an FAQ and glossary pages and just started building that out. And it's just literally, these little snippets. And they really just, you call it the answer library, right? And it's just like a dedicated page that answers these top 50 questions. And it's just sitting
Yeah.
there on your page. And and again, like and this goes against a lot of marketing demand gen, right? No gated content, no advertising your programs and sponsored results. Those have a place, but there is, the structured evergreen long form content that just is out there that is designed to just make your presence known. And I think that's where it becomes, big, especially on your website. And, even like with LinkedIn, it's just, those short insights and POVs and the storytelling without any, ulterior motive other than just answering the questions and telling the story that needs to be told. And
Yeah.
truth be told, things like podcasts, the transcripts that get indexed, I mean,
Oh
those are
yeah.
things that are huge. So, YouTube and podcasts, all those things, it's becomes very much it's ironic that you see yourself in an AI driven world and the answer to that is to be more human. It's kind of wild, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh man. And then I want to touch a little bit on the idea of the storytelling itself.
Yeah.
And what makes for a good story?
So I think the first thing is um, think about clarity, not marketing
Hmm.
speak. Don't use the jargon, right? If the content sounds like a pitch deck, AI is not going to use it, and the buyers won't trust it, right? So I think it's more about explaining the problem, explaining the approach, and then explaining the alternatives to it, not your. And I think it's then after that fact, and as you get them kind of more engaged with you, then you can start introducing your solution, right? I also think you think about frameworks over features. And what I mean by that is, we tend to, build out, our feature set and, features solve X, Y, and Z. And, I think when you build out frameworks like, what are the inflection points where growth happens, or what is the readiness factors in there, or what are the three questions that need to be asked in the framework of how you build as an example, like how you build an effective project management strategy, right?
Hmm.
Those get spread. Features kind of tend to get lost in the mix, and I think that's one of those things. I also think you need to tell the story from the buyer's perspective, right? And I think that's one thing we tend to do, and like we tend to tell it from the company perspective, or at least from the solution perspective, right? So we tend to say, okay, well, our solution is designed to solve your problems, but maybe it's more about like here's why small teams feel the pressure when it comes to managing projects or when it comes to marketing effectiveness. Here's what most companies don't realize that they could be doing better. But not,
Yeah.
other than saying our cutting edge platform does this. And I think it's, there's a place for it. I'm not saying that it's not important to have on your site or anywhere you are, but I think when you're at that discovery stage and you're at that place of getting noticed, I think you want to um, be very much as a helpful content, and do it across channels, right? So like, don't don't just say, okay, I'm gonna just go on my website and I'm gonna be totally cool and be honest and be helpful and create these.
Yeah.
It's all channels. And the more you do that, and the more you interlink, and the more you reference, thought leadership content in addition to yours, the more you're likely to get picked up. I mean, I think in a world of AI enabled buyers now, the most helpful brand is going to win.
And really like selflessly helpful. And I think this brings it full circle back around to where we started, just the idea of making it actually helpful.
Yeah,
Those will win, not the people who are trying to be sneaky and you didn't actually learn anything.
Yep. And
Yeah.
it's a little bit like a lot of things in marketing. There's this counterintuitiveness because you have targets to hit, and you have, and obviously you have top down strategies, and again, it's like we need to generate leads, we need to generate pipeline, we need to build all these things, and you're sitting there saying, well, I'm just going to write content that's just going to be helpful, and I think there's a counterintuitiveness or a reluctance to say, okay, well, I'd like to do this, but I also have deadlines. I also have, quotas to meet, and I also have all these things to meet. And I think this is a long game. This is really, again, you think about SEO, maybe, I don't even know, 10 years ago or whatever it may be. We always said that SEO is a long game, right? I mean, it's one of those things. It's not like the algorithms are going to pick it up right away. You have to build your keywords and, kind of structure your content and do technical and contextual SEO. I think it's the same thing with some of this agentic marketing. It's a long game. You've got to really build that into as part of the marketing mix, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's not a I'm just going to do this. I'm also going to need to do my demand gen. I'm going to need to go to trade shows. I'm going to need to do webinars and things like that. But I feel like when you speak um, and you share content and you share thought leadership, it's all about kind of not tripping off everybody's BS meters, because I think anybody can smell a pitch from a mile away, and it's one of those things that you have to just be cognizant of. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of companies are starting to do it, and I think it's just a matter of understanding that balance of we got to do this, but we also need to obviously do our traditional marketing because got to pay the bills, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. You have this, you have the go-tos, then you have the ones you're going to test in there and throw in there. That makes a total sense. There's a lot to keep track of, though. I'm curious, where do you like to learn from? Are you reading things lately? Are you listening to pods? What's your source of
Yeah,
choice?
I do a lot of I obviously listen to networks and people I'm engaged with, and I have a pretty strong network of people that we all are kind of going through these changes, and we've built like a little community of marketers that are just trying to figure it out. And I think that's where I get a lot of um, my knowledge from, or at least my kind of perspectives from, and just listening to people who are actually doing it in different businesses and different walks of life. And again, like I think for me, I've carved out my niche in B2B for companies that are basically at that growth stage. They really are not a brand name. They're a name that wants to be known. They want to grow. And so a lot of the companies that I talk to, and people I talk to, that's where they are struggling. And that's where I have, certainly come to talk to those people um, and, kind of get their perspective on why they're not being seen. And then, like I said, you just kind of, you absorb everything you can possibly look at. And so there's a lot of different places out there, but I always look to my own community of people that I've, built, and, your podcast is great too. So I'll give you a plug.
Appreciate that. And we'll let you stay now that you mentioned
Great.
us, because I had my finger on the eject button, and
That'll be funny.
we've mentioned a bunch of futuristic things. I'm just curious if there's one in particular that you're most excited about. Maybe it's in the AI development side, the agentic side. Is there
Yeah.
something you got your eye on? You're most excited about?
For me, I have been personally navigating the content in itself. I've been really amazed at some of the intent based tools that center around how AI is, you know, building question-based data. And like I mentioned it before, there's tools out there, like Answer the Public, and also Asked. Those two they're really cool because they kind of scour around and they look for ways you can, change your narrative. And I've been looking at that. And the one thing that I've always, in addition to, kind of finding this intent tools is the whole idea of digestible content over, some of the long form content, which again, long form content has its place, pillar pages have their place, all that kind of stuff. But I always feel like those quick hits, little short videos, video shorts, the 5 minute webinar I used to do a long time ago, where it was just like literally a 5 minute webinar. Even doing podcasts where you're just building snippets and you're just kind of pulling out these little nuggets of information. I feel like we live in a world, and just ask my kids where they don't hold an attention span for very long. And, I mean, people go through their LinkedIn feed, they go through, maybe their YouTube reels or whatever it may be. And, they just kind of pop in what's quick, fast, and is able to get the information across. So that's kind of where I've been, those two areas, like figuring out kind of the analysis of how people buy now, and then building digestible content to respond to it, with long form kind of sitting in the background, where it's like, come check this out and go. And then, so that's been where I feel like I've seen a lot of traction. And, uh, and it's funny because I'm not particularly, I don't particularly, it's funny because I don't particularly like going on camera and doing these things. I'm just not that type of person. But I
Sure.
found myself now, it's one of those things, you just do it and it becomes interesting. And I've done it for most of my career. It's just, you don't think about it in the sense of, putting yourself out there or putting anybody out there. I'm just a mouthpiece for what the people are looking for or the people are thinking about. But yeah, it's been an interesting ride for the last couple of years. And I think people are, especially marketers and especially companies, are clamoring to even just understand, what should I be doing? What am I doing? What should I be doing right now? Because I don't know. I'm putting out LinkedIn ads and nobody cares, or I'm, putting out keywords and nobody cares. And, I'm trying to build out, all these white papers and things like that, and nobody cares. And I was just talking to a client. I said, I hate to tell you this, but once somebody hits a landing page and the content's gated, they're out.
Yeah, they're gone.
They're gone. Unless
Yeah.
it's super, it really has to be super relevant. But it usually, more than often, you're offering a white paper, ChatGPT is offering it for free.
That's a great point.
And the key is to say, okay, well, if ChatGPT is where everybody's going to go to ask their questions, then I better be on that answer, or I better be referenced, and I better be
Yeah.
one of those people. And, so yeah, it's kind of wild.
Man. Well, I mean, kind of on that note, and I mean, not normally the guy hopping on video podcast, but my next question for you, Tim, is like, who are you? Who are you? Can you take me back in time to like little Tim days? Did you know you're going to be a marketing leader and helping all these different companies scale and grow and all that kind of stuff? What was it like?
Gosh, now you're going to age me here. Okay, cool, fair enough. Yeah, man, I I think I switched over to business in my college days. I knew I was creative, right? So I think I always came into, I was always a creative person, and I always loved to write. I love to, design. I love to do all those things. I actually, thought about like being an English major and being like, oh, maybe I'll be a writer or something like that. And then I kind of said, well, I kind of want to make money. So, so what's the closest creative thing I can do that'll, be something where I can make some money? And marketing just kind of fell into my lap. And I really, from out of the gate, I was always in startups or small businesses. And I just, was one of those guys that just loved to jump into those things. And, I used to use the term surviving small. Like it's all about how do you survive in a small business, and it was just it was one of those things that I kind of always use as my mantra is like surviving small. Okay, let's survive small, and so I built that whole program out there, and it's just been one thing after another. Like, every time something new comes out, you adapt and you have to kind of figure it out. And I've just been completely enamored by the way things have changed and moved around. And, you know, um, it went from traditional marketing and advertising, cool ads and things like that, to all of a sudden inbound marketing became the new norm, and we shifted to new inbound marketing and lead nurturing and building a whole entire, awareness cycle. And now we're kind of switched over to this new way of thinking about how we connect with our market, in a way that you have to just really, um, there is no room for, just being disingenuous, or I shouldn't say disingenuous. It's not the right word. It's being pitchy or being, jargony. There's no room for that anymore, because people are kind of seeing through it, or they're, at least they're not,
Yeah.
the prompts aren't being asked about, like, what's the most purpose built solution, or, things like that. And you're like, okay, well, so yeah, so I've been, that's my whole thing, man. It's funny because, I have very creative kids, and, they do all sorts of creative stuff as well. And, I think it's just one of those things, being able to be creative as a professional, has been one of the core tenets of me sticking around in this business for as long as I have. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's me.
Well, I have a bit of a hypothetical question for you,
Cool.
if you're ready for this.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right. You see, I may or may not have a time machine over here in New Hampshire. So you come visit, a little customer visit or something, you getting the information you need to tell the story the right way. And you drive up north a little bit, we get some beer, some lobster, and there's a time machine. It's in the backyard, covered in a tarp. And so we use this particular time machine, but it's very special in that we go back in time, two-seater, so I get to join you. You go back in time to meet yourself, and you get a chance to meet yourself a couple days after graduating, getting out of school, and you got the shiny new degree, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. You got that marketing degree, right? What's up? And then 4 days later, this guy comes from the future, has a. So, what would you say to yourself? What kind of things would you tell younger you?
Oh man, don't party so hard, man. um, yeah, no, I think, what would I tell myself? I think, honestly, it would be a lot of the idea around, don't be don't be afraid to break a mold every now and then. Don't be afraid to make a couple mistakes. Um, don't always play it safe sometimes. I think you go in and you're kind of like, okay, I'm gonna, I want to do things right, and I want to, do it the way it's supposed to be done, or, this is how, how marketing has been done, and this is how we should be doing it. I need to make sure I build this ad in this certain way, and, find different ways to fit within the mold of what the expectation is. And I think, marketing's about making controlled mistakes, and I think people forget about that a lot. I actually, it's funny because when I when I had teams with me, and I managed teams, I would leave room for time to, try crazy stuff, and just say, hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with trying something crazy. Now, when I say mistakes, I don't mean, something that's offensive or illegal, putting it out on the internet. I mean, trying something that may or may not work.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of times, we're all under deadlines. We're all under moving fast and growth mode and all that kind of stuff. And even back then, it was, like, do it this way, and this is the way it's going to work, and this is how we're going to get people. And I think, sometimes you just want to try something, or you should try something that might or might not work.
Right.
And I think making mistakes is always is sometimes the best way to just learn and kind of try something new. And you never know. I mean, if it may work out. And I think it's totally great. And when I manage teams, I always and I wrote about this, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, about being what I call a training wheels manager, because I'm a big biker
Mm,
guy. So I
nice.
do all cycling all the time. So um and so I always say to my team, I said, listen, kind of like training wheels on a bike for you. Um, for the most part, training wheels are actually, again, they're maybe about half inch off the ground. They're not actually touching the ground when you're riding it. You're actually riding on your two wheels most of the time. And it's only when you tip do the training wheels come in to kind of keep you aligned. And I always say to my team, say, listen, I want you to ride on your own, go forward, do your thing, and either try new things, make mistakes, but if you start to tip, that's where I come in and I'll help right you up. And I think that's where leaders, marketing leaders, start to think about, we have a lot of ways that we want to steer the engine. We want to be the handlebars, right, and steering in the direction. But in reality, if you're building a culture of trust within your team, being the training wheels helps so much, because the team really is able to kind of make those mistakes in a controlled environment. They're allowed to be a little bit more creative. They're allowed to be a little bit more autonomous. And, all of a sudden, it's only when they're kind of tipping that you come in. And so I learned that lesson the hard way. So I guess going back to this time machine, when I was a first time manager, I was the steering wheel, right? I was like, I'm going to do all these things, and you'll just do this, do that, do this, do that.
Yeah.
And sadly, what ended up happening was, one of the employees, he decided to move on, and she was an event coordinator or whatever it was, and um, she realized she didn't know what to do, because I had been doing all of it for her. And so I learned a hard lesson and was like, listen, at some point you cannot do all the work. You want to make sure you're,
Yeah.
let other people learn and make their mistakes and do all those things. So, long-winded way of kind of getting my younger self, but a lot of,
It's fascinating, the idea of the training wheels. I remember teaching my kids to ride their bikes, and at first you try to like run. Oh, you take the training wheels off at some point, right?
Mhm.
And you try to run with them, but inevitably they go faster than you can run,
It's true.
and then you're holding on to the bike or them. And it became very clear to me that if I kept holding on to them, I will make us both crash,
It's true.
right?
It's true.
And I actually have to let go.
Yeah,
Uh, Otherwise, I'm going to slow it down. And he's not going to have speed to be able to keep going and keep riding.
exactly.
And it was like, wow, what a time. So I love your training wheels analogy and how that relates to management. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. It's funny. People always say that my former employees and colleagues will say, "Oh, it's another Tim analogy. Here we go. All right." He loves his analogy.
I didn't hear that many analogies today.
No, no, I tried to keep them. I tried to keep them tucked away.
I think you got a good amount. I didn't get overwhelmed.
The analogies and dad jokes, they're gonna stay tucked away for this one.
Do you have a favorite dad joke before we head out of here?
Oh, not really.
All right, I got one for you.
Okay.
I love this, and I also tell it too many times, so my kids hate it now, but that makes me love it more. Um, what do you call a chicken with lettuce in its eye?
Hit me.
Chicken Caesar salad. Chicken Caesar salad. And with that, Tim, thank you so much for coming out here. Where do you want people to connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested, companies, big breakthrough in marketing, big-breakthrough.com.
Okay.
And that's where I live. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I try to get out there at least once a week and post, articles and videos and stuff like that. So feel free to reach
That's
out.
great.
I'm out there, and I'm loving what I do, and I'm loving, all the things that are changing here. It's a fun ride, a little bit rocky, but here we are. Yeah.
Here we are, man. Let's go. Let's go. Let's get that ride going.
That's right.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on here.
Yeah.
This has been a blast.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you. It's been great. It's been great talking again.
Agreed. And the mark of a good pod is one, when the time flies by and you're like, holy crap. And then two is so I take notes over here on my side. I'm like learning alongside everyone else listening. But then I go, oh crap. Or I go, oh, whoa, I got at least two. I put a little box with I have like some to-dos on my notes, and I feel like it's always a good sign when you go, what gaps do we have? And then what are the 50 questions we need to ask? But also I wrote down that big takeaway, which what is currently missing from all the other content out there on this particular topic? And what's missing here? And let's answer it. Let's fill in that gap and be a better piece of content for everyone.
Yeah.
Tell the right story, So thank you. Thank you for being a part of the show. But hey, with that, man, I'll just close out by saying this has been a crazy, great episode of the Connect to Market Pod. And we'll see you all next time. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at connect2market.com. Connect to Market is sponsored by Ringmaster, creating podcasts and communities that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth.